Tartaria versus America. What is it? Let me tell you what I think it is. I think there was a race of people from the beginning called Adam and Eve that were tall. And this is all just my map research, all just because of maps. I was blown away when I saw where Adam and Eve, where the Garden of Eden is, where Babylon was, where the ark landed, where people migrated from the ark. And then I started thinking, wow, this all makes perfect sense. Huh. This all makes perfect sense. People knew from the beginning, it's like telephone, what was going on, where people went. Maps were always a thing. They navigated this whole face of the earth since forever. I mean, they floated on it for 40 days and 40 nights before the thing landed. And then the thing lands, and half the buildings now, those big, huge castles that they talk about, like the Temple of Solomon, I started to realize in the Old Testament, it's city after tower after castle. We thought like Jesus was walking around with like shacks. No, it was probably way beautiful. He came from heaven to earth. It was way pretty back then. Just think of London. Think of all those streets. Think of how gorgeous it used to look. Well, it looked like that here in the United States. It's like I can prove it by all these pictures and all the destruction. It's so sad. Let me just show you a couple real quick. All right, I love going to the New York Public Library, and then you can start researching American history. But just look at some of these buildings. They're just amazing. And this was like typical everywhere you went in America. Because I'm going to be talking about what I think they did with these, I want you to notice this archway. And this is from the entrance to Yellowstone Park. The issue date on this particular photograph or postcard is 1903 to 1904, okay? Just check that out. So this is a good segue for what I wanted to do this video about. What I think happened after the colonization of the Indies. If you're like, what is she talking about? Please go back to some of my last videos and look at the maps. The maps show us that from the ark, there were 3 continents. And that was like that until 1492. And then in 1492, Christopher Columbus and that crown came over. And things started changing over here in the West and East Indies, which was in Asia. And then Amerigo comes over by a crown from another country. I want to say France or Spain. Okay, somebody on here will know. Anyways, I should know. But he came over here, and then they renamed this country America. And they didn't name it Amerigo because they wanted to have a feminine touch like Asia, because this used to be Asia in India. And it's so provable by the maps, which you can find on raremaps.com. I mean, Google is at your fingertips too. It's not just at mine, right? I just choose to spend my time doing this. So what did they do when they came over here? Well, people were fighting. What did you do when they tried to do this to you and when they tried to do this to you? What I did is I refused. And then I pulled my kids out of school, and they still to this day have not gone back to that indoctrination system. So, you know, a lot of people just complied. So that's what happened with the natives. A lot of them started complying and letting their kids be taken off to boarding schools. And then they started to see by complying, their kids were dying and not good things were happening. So that's when they started fighting back. And that's when we started having the Indian Wars. That lasted 7 years because they were fighting for their lands. And now we know the history of what happened. But you know what I think? That just raises the bar even more, that they took their own buildings that were here, that they lived in, that were castles and mansions and beautiful, because these guys came in tents. I can prove that too. Look at this. They all came like this. See Abraham Lincoln, and he's getting the Mason salute and all that. Well, they're the ones that lived in the tents. Then they took over their buildings using cannons and guns and dogs, and then they made them live in their tents and took over their buildings. Kind of like these pictures. And all this stuff can be found and proven. You just have to look. So then we start idolizing these people who are from other countries taking over this country and treating the people of this country like they're savages when they're the ones that lived in the castles. Then they took their castles and made them prisons and insane asylums. So I want to go my goal this year is to go through every single old prison in every single state in the United States and show you guys. So the first one I'm going to do is Boise, Idaho, because that's where I was born. And I want to show, and I always had a fascination with this old penitentiary. So I think I'll do a separate video just because I'm 5 minutes here on just the Idaho State Pen. So this will be a part 1 of old pens in America. Old penitentiaries in America. That's what we'll call this. And we'll go through all 50 states eventually by year's end. And we're going to show people how these buildings were not prisons. They became prisons. They were someone's home and they became a prison. Let's do Idaho first.